Unit 2, a prelude to the study of poetry. Structure. Objectives. Introduction. The reading of literature. 2.2.1 Writing and reading as historical acts. 2.2.2 The subjectivity of a work of art. 2.2.3 The specular moment of literature. 2.2.4 From the writer's text to the reader's work. Versification. The grammar of poetry. 2.3.1 Prosody, meter, scansion. A. Prosody. B. Meter and metries. C. Scansion. Types of meters. 2.4.1 Syllable stress or accented syllabic meters. I. The iambic meter. I. The trochaic meter. E. The anapestic meter. IV. The dactylic meter. V. The amphibrachic meter. 2.4.2 Strong stress meters. 2.4.3 Syllabic meters. 2.4.4 Quantitative meters. Rhyme and rhythm and poetry. 2.5.1 Rhyme and rhyme schemes. 2.5.2 Rhythm. Analysis of a poem. Let's sum up. A brief annotated bibliography answers to exercises. After going through this unit you will be able to appreciate any work of literary art better, especially a poem. To split it into more concrete terms. 3.0 You will be able to speak about the abstract entity that is a poem, in other words the ontology of a poem. L. Speak on the acoustic aspects of a poem such as meter, rhyme, and rhythm. And finally, you will complete the task of appreciation by bringing together the capacities developed in the previous and the present unit. With this theoretical background you will be better equipped to study this course. 2.1 Introduction. The function of this unit is, in a way, to complete the task we had set for ourselves in the previous unit, i.e. preparing you mentally, equipping you technically, and orientation for the study of poetry, providing you with a perspective for the study of this MA English program in general, and this course on British poetry in particular. This course on literature, perhaps like any other course on literature, seeks to educate you effectively, improve your ability for appreciation, give you better insights into the ways literary artists, especially the poets, communicate. In Unit 1 we adopted the method of commenting upon two portraits. They are examples of visual art, and perhaps made communication more convenient. In this unit we go a little deeper. In talking about a poem you talk about the images and metaphor, symbol, and icon, emblem and exemplum that have a visceral appeal, though in an abstract manner. There is a still more subtle and deep level which is the rhythm. This is a product of meter and rhyme, and of many other effects which perhaps even the poets are not always conscious. The entire sound effect or prosody of a poem is a common sound of the society, the individual and the language. We will examine some of the fundamental ideas in prosody in the third, fourth, and fifth sections. These sections of this unit would require drilling as you do in mathematics. It will require just a little attention and practice, so you may study especially 2.3 and 2.4 independently of other sections, if you so wish. The first section, 2.2, is a bit abstract, and examines the thing called a poem. It would be good, if you can get a hang of the poem in abstraction. However, don't bother yourself too much about this section in case you find it vague. The last major section, i.e. 2.6, shows how all your study can be employed in deciphering the text of a poem. You have done this type of work during your undergraduate days. You may feel that you did not need this section. However, it is included to bring the discussions in the two introductory units to a conclusion. This is the shortest of the 5 major sections and you may go through it before reading other sections, if you so desire. However, don't break off at any of the subsections within a section, as that may interrupt the discussion in your mind. Then you may feel muddled. We have not discussed the poetic forms such as the lyric, epic, allegory or fable, or the various aspects of figurative language such as simile, metaphors, irony, hyperbole, or terms of art such as fancy, imagination, Gothic, classic, neoclassic, romantic, pastoral, elegy, satire, pathos, myth, romance, sensibility, wit and humor, etc. We expect you to know them, or consult a dictionary, to find out errors and, when they occur in your study of this course. Although a little time consuming, this unit will enhance your ability to study literature in general and poetry in particular. You may study this unit for an hour or two daily over a week or two. 2.2 The reading of literature. Such are the changes in critical attitudes, that a poem is no longer to be read as an inscription on the rock devoid of its origin, context or locale. The poet seen as an inhabitant of a lonely tower arised in the music of his thought, or an inmate of a castle freed from the responsibilities of life whose servants could do the living for him appears today as an unrealistic and posed picture of the poet. The poet is a human being among other human beings, and speaking to, and being spoken to reciprocally. The language she or he uses is a social artifact, and also a tool in politics. Let's recall Shakespeare, Yeats or Blake or Cabot or Tulsi. They were real men spieling to other prelude to the men and women like themselves. Study. We could not agree less with Derrida that the institutional or socio-political space of literary production does not simply surround works, it affects them in their very structure. As students of literature we wish to feel that element of the text on our I pulse. Hence we get interested in the Irishness of Yeats, the Julahaness of Cabot, the atheism of Shelley and the conservativeness of Eliot and Tulsi. 2. 1. Writing and reading as historical acts. These issues involve us in the historicity of literary products. Talking about the makeup of the poet, and his tradition and the individual talent tilde liadward. That the historical sense compels a man to write not merely with his own generation in his bones, but with a feeling that the whole of the literature of Europe from Homer, and within it the whole of the literature of his own country has a simultaneous existence, and composes a simultaneous order. Whittle tilde out this sense, Eliot opines, no poet can remain a poet beyond his 25th year. However, it is not just the trad-tilde-tion of literature that a good poet embodies, but also that of politics, science, economy and natural events. To turn from poetic creations to criticism, in our time Derrida points out that deconstruction calls for a highly historian's attitude, and admits that of chrononatology is a history book through and through. In his or her experience of writing as such, continues Derrida, a writer cannot not be concerned, interested, anxious about the past, that of literature, history, or philosophy, of culture in general. Derrida cites two dissimilar cases of James Joyce and William Faulkner. What I have just suggested is as valid for Joyce, that immense allegory of historical memory, as for Faulkner, who doesn't write in such a way that he gathers together at every sentence, and in several languages at once, the whole of Western culture. Dryden in his poetry comments upon contemporary events more frequently than Wordsworth, but for that reason Wordsworth's poetry is not less historically situated than Dryden's, or for that matter Shelley's. 2.2.2 The subjectivity of a work of art. The poet, we have said, is a person living among other, and yet his 111er poem is not, for the moment we may say, an objective document such as a theorem of Euclid, or the general theory of relativity of Einstein. The poet writes about an intensely personal experience, not only when a Wordsworth is writing his autobiographical poem such as the Prelude, or a Tennyson expressing his grief over the death of his friend Arthur Ilam in LJZ Memoriam, but also when an Eliot writes The Wastelander and Aurobindo Ghosts of Itri. So powerful is the narcissism, that it does not forsake even a philosopher such as Jacques Derrida. He told Derek Attridge, W. At the narcissistic moment of adolescent identification, this was above all the desire to inscribe merely a memory or two. I say only, though I already felt it an impossible and endless task. Deep down, there was something like a lyrical movement toward confidences or confessions. Greta goes on. Still today there remains in me an obsessive desire to save an uninterrupted inscription, in the form of a memory, what happens or fails to hap tilde r. What one should be tempted to denounce as allure, i.e., totalization or gathering up. Orientation for the splurge of poetry isn't this what keeps me going? The idea of an internal polylogue, everything that later, in what I hope, was a slightly more refined way, was able to lead me to Rousseau or to Joyce, was first of all the adolescent dream of keeping a trace of all the voices which were traversing me, or were Ozzy 12 us doing so, and which was to be so precious, unique, both specular and speculative. Derrida above italicizes fails to happen, and Alness doing so, which shows that literature is not just a simple record of the events of the artist's life, but also of his unfulfilled wishes, his dreams, his desires, that Roland Barthes in the Pliswo FT text went even further and called neuroses. Thus every writer's motto reads: wrote Barthes, mad I cannot be, sane I do not deign to be, Isuiotic is. The belief in the subjectivity or autobiographical character of all art has been felt with ever greater intensity since the Romantics. In our own time, I want, writes George Poulet, at all costs to save the subjectivity of literature. Eliot's dictum, honest criticism and sensitive appreciation is directed not upon the poetry, has been much abused in English departments in support of a certain kind of idleness that obviates any research into the life and times of the poet. Poetry, we have heard Bain echoed so often, is not a turning loose of emotion, but an escape from emotion. It is not the expression of personality, but an escape from personality. What is forgotten, however, is that, while contradicting Wordsworth, Eliot went on to qualify his definition in the following words. But, of course, only those who have personality and emotions know what it means to want to escape from these things. In Eliot's theory of poetry, as much as in his poetry, we observe the impact of his piety, which demands the extinction of personality. For knowledge, wrote E.H. Gombrich, a well-stocked mind is clearly the key to the practice of interpretation. In order to interpret a poem, we cannot overemphasize the importance of a knowledge of the life of the poet and the background of his age. Man, wrote Emerson, is explicable by nothing less than all his history. 2.2.3 The specular moment of literature. He should, however, pointed out Emerson, see that he can live all history in his own person. He advises the student to read history actively and not passively. Emerson exhorts him. He must sit solidly at home, and not suffer himself to be bullied by kings or empires, but know that he is greater than all the geography and all the government of the world. He must transfer the point of view from which history is commonly read, from Rome and Athens and London, to himself, and not deny his conviction that he is the court, and if England or Egypt have anything to say to him, he will try the case. If not, let them forever be silent. What is relevant for us in history is the moment or instance in the present, in the poet's life, in the reader's life, that the past can throw its floodlight upboil. Otherwise, we say, as it has been said, let the dead past bury its dead, or repeat with Gandhi Ji and Hein Swartz, that happy is a nation without a history. The necessary history one's inscribed in ourselves, just as the wings of the young pigeon that hatched yesterday predicted air, and the eyes of the human embryo anticipated light. The poet writes about the present, about the living, not what is dead and discarded. The poet's text is the text of blisses, as Barthes says, the text that discomforts, unsettles the reader's historical, cultural, physiological assumptions, the consistency of his tastes, values, memories, brings low a crisis his relation with language. Now you may ask, what are you to do as a student and critic of literature? How should you treat history or biography in your own analyses of a poem? History and biography have to be reconciled to the interpretation of a specular moment. Despertilde bed 111 The work of art. Derrida opines that history is contretemps, a series of unlucky, unfortunate or unexpected events, and its virtue lies in its iterability. In his signature event context, he pointed out that the verb iterate comes from the Sanskrit root idle, which means different, asterisk. While history is iterable, or repeatable, it is not the same event that is repeated. Anjali, though a copy of a 16th century Mughal painting, is a new act, has a different originary history. It no tilde zealous underlines the value of the original. By repetition, Derrida points out, not that the text is thereby dehistoricized, but historicity is made or iterability. There is no history without iterability, and this is also what lets the traces continue to function in the absence of the general context or sign. Elements of the context. It is for these reasons that we have to read a poem simultaneously for what is unique and specular in it, and the iteration in both senses of repetition and difference of the historical and general. 2.2.4 From the writer's text to the reader's work. Western criticism in the latter half of the 20th century can be said to have moved from a poet-cs of writing to a poetics of reading. The Sanskrit critical theory developed theories of correctly dry pratibza and abhuvayatri prasidam, the creative and appreciative talents. classic criticism Coinland Roland Barthes in Jazz Music T has never paid any attention to the reader, for it the writer is the only person in literature. For Barthes points out that a text is not a line of words releasing a s-tilde theological meaning, the message of the author God, but a multi-dimensional space in which a variety of writings, none of them original, blend and clash. Barthes pointed out at the instability of the text. According to him, a text is not isotropic. Isos in Greek means same, and troios manner or disposition. The edges and the seams are unpredictable, he tells us. In The Man, could we lay I-111 open opined Emerson, we should see the reason for his last flourish and tendril of his work, as every spine and tint in the seashell pre-exist in the secreting organs of the fish. However reassuring Emerson may sound, it appears today as an elusive goal, non-tilde-ellis a desirable one. So after Derrida we talk about archaeological criticism that goes at the writer's text, to the sources of experience both unique and not unique at the same time. In this sense the text is open. We have just a trace of the author's meaning in his text which can be supplemented by the author's other works both written and unwritten and all other texts of all other authors, the TV programs, newspaper reports etc., to which the author responds. The reader, however, delimits the open-ended text of the author. S/ITC imposes upon it the status of a work. He interprets, analyses, examines and evaluates and arrives at a definite meaning which we call eschatological criticism after Derrida. Eschatology from the Greek doctrine of last things is usually applied to death and the last judgment. Thus the reader's work has a stable meaning. This criticist-LL can be called in Barthes' words a mere parasite of the story being narrated. Self-check exercise I. 1. Write in about 60 of your own words on the relevance of the reader to a work of art. Prelude to the study. Orientation for the study of poetry. 1. 1. 2. If your friend tells you that a poem is made of words, how would you respond 1 to him/her? D. 2.3 Versification. The grammar OW poetry. At P. In one his last poems written in 1938 called The Statues, the Irish poet W.B. Yeats. 18,651,939, marveled at the lineaments of a plummet measured face. As U. H.O.W. Mason's work with plummets, which is a plumb, or ball of lead attached to a string for testing perpendicularity of wall, etc. And yet the plummet measured face has its distinctive epicures or lineaments. Earlier on in the poem Yeats had written, for the men, that with a mallet or a chisel modeled these calculations, that look but casual flesh, put down all Asiatic vague immensities, and not banks of oars, that swam upon the many-headed foam at Salamis. Europe put off that foam when Phidias gave women dreams and dreams their looking-glass. /I. Salamis, which you may locate on the map of Greece, was the site of the rout in 480 BC. Of Xerxes, 485-465 BC right parenthesis the son of Darius, the Persian king, 521-485 BC. By the Greeks. According to Herodotus, 5th BC. The Greek historian who had participated in the war and left an account of it, the armies of the Persians were fantastic, their might unchallenged. However, they were defeated by the cooperation of Athens and Sparta. Salamis is seen here as a symbol of the victory of mathematics, calculation, number over vague immensities and the proverbial prelude to the Asiatic grandeur. We are reminded of the sea battle at Salamis by the many-headed study foam in the 6th line of the quotation above. In the same line Yeats ningly slips in the name of Phidias, who was perhaps the greatest artist of ancient Europe. His colossal statue of Zeus at Olympia in the southeast of Acropolis wrought in ivory and gold over a core of wood was the most famous statue of antiquity. He had also contributed 3 statues of Athene on Acropolis. One of thine was wrought in ivory and gold. He had also probably designed, and certainly supervised the construction of the frieze of Parthenon. Yeats perhaps wants to tell us that it was Phidias' history, 11 his lifelike creations, products of calculation and measurement nonetheless that set high standards for the Society of Pericles, 492-429 BC. We may not or only partially agree with Yeats' observations above on Asiatic vague immensities, but we cannot deny that pieces of art, or any asterisk work in politics or warfare for that matter, are human contrivances of planning with the help of cold concrete facts, be they words, or colors or rocks and mortar or people and locations. A student who wishes to learn poetry properly must learn the basics of meter, especially if he wishes to appreciate the poetry in a foreign language. With reference to the study of ancient Greek and Latin literature by English students, Eliot opined, "We have to learn a dead language by an artificial method, and our methods of teaching have to be applied to pupils most of whom have only a moderate gift for language." While delivering his W.P. Kerr Memorial Lecture, 1942, at Glasgow, Eliot went even further, and emphasized the study of English meter even for the native English speaker. Even in approaching the poetry of our own language, we may find the classification of meters, of lines with different numbers of syllables and stresses in different places, useful at a preliminary stage, as a simplified map of a complicated territory. But it is only the study, not of poetry but of poems, that can train our ear. What Eliot says after the colon gives the impression that if you know the technique someday inspiration would descend and give your verse the life that is poetry. The soul of rhythm Sri Aurobindo, whose writings you are going to read in another course, wrote, can only be fooled by listening into what is behind the music of words and sound and things. He admitted that the intellectual knowledge of technique helps, provided one does not make of it an in-ear device, or a rigid fetter. Aurobindo appears to be in agreement with Eliot, but they appear on the surface to place their emphasis a little differently. Aurobindo points out, attention to technique harms only when the riddle is so busy with it that lie becomes indifferent to substance. But if the substance is adequate, the attention to technique can only give it greater beauty. It is, in my view, Aurobindo went on, a serious error to regard meter or rhyme as artificial elements, mere external and superfluous equipment restraining the movement and sincerity of poetic form. Meter, on the contrary, is the most natura one mold of expression for certain states of creative emotion and vision, i.e. much more natural and spontaneous than a non-metrical form. The emotion expresses itself best and most powerfully in a balanced, rather than in a loose and shapeless rhythm. The search for technique is simply the search for the best and missile. 01. Assertion for TLRC slurry of poetry. Appropriate form for expressing what has to be said, and once it is found, the inspiration can flow quite naturally and fluently into it. In different words though, Eliot and Aurobindo appear to be in agreement about the place and utility of the knowledge of versification in the writing, and, by extension for us, the study of poetry in English. 2.3.1 Prosody, meter, scantially. A. Prosody. That part of grammar which deals with laws governing the structure of verses called prosody. It encompasses the study of all the I and tilde ends of language that contribute towards acoustic or rhythmic effects, chiefly in poetry, but also in prose. Ezra Pound called prosody the articulation of the total sound of a poem. However, we how that alliteration, the rhythmic repetition of consonants and assonants, repetition of vowel sounds, occur as much in prose as in poetry. Besides assonance and alliteration, rhythmic effects are produced in poetry as well as in prose by the repetition of syntactical and grammatical patterns. However, compared with even the simplest verse, the prosodic structure of prose would appear haphazard and unconsidered. B. Meter and metrics. Meter measures the rhythm of a line of verse. The word meter derives from the Greek word zeleron, which means measure. Traditionally, meter refers to the regular recurrence of feet. According to the Hungarian-American linguist John Lotz, b. 191.3, in some languages there are texts in which the phonetic material within certain syntactic frames, such as sentence, phrase, word, is numerically regulated. Such a text is called verse, and its distinctive characteristics meter. Metrics is the study of meter. A non-metric text is called prose. In the words of Seymour Chapman, B. 1928, meter might be defined as a systematic convention whereby certain aspects of phonology are organized for aesthetic purposes. In order to find out where the accent falls, we scan a line. Like any convention, Chapman goes on, it is susceptible of individual variation which could be called stylistic, taking style in the common meaning of idiosyncratic way of doing something. C. Scansion. In general parlance, to scan is to look intently at all parts successively. Radars cause particular regions to be traversed by a controlled beam. In prosody, scansion refers to metrical scanning of verse. When a unit of verse, a foot, a line or a stanza is scanned with the help of symbols, the uniter can be seen as well as heard. We make use of a few symbols in order to scan a passage in verse, and sometimes also in the case of prose. The symbols are shown below. Symbol name of the symbol purpose. 1. The acute accent metrically stressed syllable U. The brief metrically weak syllable. I. A single line division between feet. I. 1. A double line caesura or pause in the line. A. Arrest, a syllable metrically expected but not actually present. I. 2.4 types of meters. There are basically 4 types of meters. They are I. Syllable stress, or accented syllabic meters, i.e. strong stress meters. E. Syllabic meters. If. Quantitative meters. We will now discuss each one of them one by one. 2.4.1 Syllable stress, or accented syllabic meters. The smallest unit of meter in poetry is a foot. A foot in prosody is a pattern of phonetically stressed and unstressed syllables. The 4 principal feet found in English verse are illustrated below. A. Iambic. B. Trochee. Lui asterisk / T tilde jur, holy, upand, G randix. / U. / C. Anopist, stand, schlonade, reappear, D. Dactyl. 1 / YWTB4.FV Desperi, messenger, property, unfamoxes. Besides, the 4 major feet, the spondee and the purus, UU, also occur as substitutions in a passage of verse. Some theorists also admit the amphibrach, ULU, amphimacer, 1U / and trubrach, UUU, into their scansion. However, these are rather uncommon in English poetry. Syllable stress meters got established in English in the poetry of Geoffrey Chaucer, 1340–1400. After him, for about 2 centuries the syllable stress meter fell into disuse or was misunderstood. It was only towards the end of the 1th century that the syllable stress meters got re-established. Now we will scan a passage of each major metrical type, and then leave a few stanzas unscanned for you to scan. After having scanned them with a pencil, you may compare your scansion with those scanned at the end of the unit. I. The iambic meter. /itk tilde mon /a question mark ch here's I a tilde sles /th. God. D /u / effects /to nod. /I as selm /tg shake /th. Spheres. Dryden. Comments. The 5-line stanza above is an iambic dimeter, 2 feet. However, the concluding line is i.e. iambic trimeter. The rhyme scheme is a BBA. Self-check exercise 1. Now you may scan the following passages, and comment briefly on the metrical features. %LHADEB Ma. Study. Orientation. FPR the study of polity. Passage 1. In woods a ranger to joy a stranger. Comments. 2. Thy way not mine 0 Lord however dark it be. Tilde e a d apostrophe me with 11 thine own hand choose out the path for me. Comments. 3. The way was long, the wind was cold, the minstrel was infant and old, the harp, 11 his sole remaining joy, was carried by an orphan boy, confusion shame remorse despair, at once his bosom swell. The damps of death bedewed his brow. Aye. He shook, he groaned, 1 he fell. Comments. 5. I put my hat upon my head equals, and walked into the Strand, and there I met another man, whose hat was in his hand. Comments. The passages above, you must have noticed, are clumsily regular. They may qualify as passable verse, but don't have the power to move us as poetry does. By far the most common in measure of English poetry is the iambic pentameter. It is generally found in 2 distinct lines, the unrhymed variety called blank verse, and the rhymed variety heroic couplet. As epics concentrated on the typical hero such as Achilles and Aeneas, they were generally called heroic poems. Dryden and Pope translated Virgil, 70–19 BC, and Homer, 9th century BC, respectively in the rhyming couplet. It became the dominant meter of late 17th and 18th century poetry. Hence the meter began to get called heroic. The Restoration playwrights, in trying to transfer epic grandeur to their stage, made their characters speak in heroic couplet. The effect, however, was grandiose rather than grand. The heroic couplet reached perfection in the hands of Alexander Pope. Below we scan 4 lines from his essay on criticisms. 1711. 1. / VL tilde HYNALP. Strives 1 so crocs 1 VZST wait / to throw. CR / move slow. 1 / B / U / not so / WH and swift 1 Canilla scours 1 THVE plain. U / flies or 1 phi unbend / XE6M1 as sklurns ITLZ Mayan. The lines above are in regular iambic pentameter except the 6th, which is an hexameter. An iambic hexameter line is also called an alexandrine. 111. The second foot of the 4th line we notice an elision, i.e. omission of a syllable in pronunciation. Thomas Norton, 1532-84, and Thomas Sackville used Blalzuk verse for the first time in their play Dorpatic, 1561. Below is a specimen from the play. The royal king and eke his sons are slain. No ruler rests within the regal seat. The heir, to whom the scepter longs, unknown. Lo, Britain's realm is left an open prey, a present spoil for conquest to ensue. The regimented uniformity of the iambic pentilmeter lines above koi tilde municulx monotony, and as pote it is lifeless. Christopher Marlowe, 1564-93, about whom you would read in the course on Briefesleur Drama, Mech 02, changed all this by veiling the accents, introducing themated pause, called lyra, and allowing the sense to flow into a freer C tilde del structure. Here is an example. Psalm Dr. Fnustus, 1604. I and / we this / the face 1 th% launched 1 athonslan asterisk d ships. Prelude to the study. II / tilde. D burnt. The topple percentus verlo tilde 1111 mi. Orientation for ESWK at HC Len, BKELIMRND $ID / eco $KCS, I. Study OF Poetry. /U1HF tilde lips /S $KFO. T tilde my S dull, LS and worry / it flies. I. /apostrophe U / apostrophe /V come. Helen, /come, V me / my soul / again. /1 / U. W. 4. 1. Re-will / I dwell 1 for Hilvan is / M these lips. VU / $U / and the 1 is draws / that is / not Alina. You would notice that the passage above is dominated by blank verse, i.e. unrhymed iambic pentameter. However, the 3rd and 5th lines are tetrameter lines. Whereas the first foot of the 3rd line is a spondee, there is an anapestic variation in the last foot. With the help of an extra unstressed syllable before kiss, Marlowe succeeds in communicating, as it were, Faustus's dog longing for Helen. Marlowe introduces the 5th line with a trochaic inversion. This is succeeded by an amphimeter dot. However, you would notice that, while there are metrical variations in the 2 lines, the number of accented syllables remain uniformly 5 in each line of the passage. Marlowe thus achieves a felicity of expression by adopting a unique rhythm apposite for the character and his situation in the play, but without contravening the natural rhythm of the English language. Even more flexibility was introduced into English poetry by Shakespeare. You may scan one of his sonnets, or some of the passages you like in his plays you will read on the British Drama Week 02 course. Self-check exercise 3. Now you may scan a couple of passages from Shakespeare and Keats, and write your comments on them in the space provided. A. 2 truths are told, as Appleby prologues to / the swell / enact of the imperial theme. I thank you, gentlemen. Are this supernatural soliciting? Cannot be ill, cannot be good. If ill, why hath it given me earnest of success? Commencing in the truth, I am fain of Cotter. If good, why do I yield to that suggestion? Whose horrid image doth unfix my hair, and make my seated heart HOCK at my ribs? Shakespeare. Muchedlt. Relurulug study. On first looking into Chapman's Homer, much have I travelled in the realms of gold, and many goodly states and kingdoms seen. Round many western islands have I been, which bards and fealty to Apollo hold. Oft of one wide expanse had I been told. Had deep-browed Homer ruled as his domain, yet did I never breathe its pure serene till I heard Chapman speak out loud and bold. Then felt I like some watcher of the skies. I, when a new planet swims into his ken, or like stout Cortez, when with eagle eyes he stared at the Pacific, and all his men looked at each other with a wild surmise. Silent upon the peak and Darien. John Keats. I. Orientation for the I. Study of poetry. I. In the examples above you noticed that two measurements are involved in meter. We have to speak about the kind of foot and the number of feet. You scanned passages in the iambic meter and 2 feet or dimeter, 3 feet or trimeter, 4 feet or tetrameter, 5 feet or pentameter, 6 feet or hexameter and 7 feet or septometer. You noticed that the septometer Versophian divided into lines of tetrameter alternating with trimeter. It has been estimated that 90% of English poetry is in the iambic pentameter. Now we will examine a few examples of the trochee, anapaest and dactyl also, i.e., the trochaic meter. Allow we scan a stanza in trochaic tetrameter. 1/May THGDMDNTHE/RDSJ/BO6 6TU1LMNTHWHH pleasure/SD duty IDWT/MNTH of 7 B's A and month TI flowers T/C/U/month A/blossom/laden/bowers. Do the drill below in order to find how well you have understood the trochaic meter. Self-check exercise IV. A. Dreadful gleams. Dismal screams. Fires that glow. Shrieks of woe. Sullen moans. Hollow groans. A. Pope. Prelude to the study. Rich the treasure. Sweet the pleasure. J. Dryden when the British warrior queen bleeding from sea. Omen rods. Sought W semicolon exclamation point H an indignant mean counsel of her country's gods. Tell me not in mournful numbers. Life is but an empty dream. For the soul is dead that slumbers. And things are not what they seem. A. W. Longfellow. E. Greater than all that walk on foot, or ride in chariots, all that dwell in palaces or garrets. 0. On the mountain stretched beneath the hoary willow lay a shepherd swain, and viewed the rolling billow. I. R. Tilde above you scanned passages of trochaic mono, di, tri, tetra, penta, and J hexameters. However, I may remind you that in good poetry you do not find long 8-dot stretches in the trochaic meter. The iambus and trochee are bisyllabic feet. Now let us 8. Orbitation for the study of poetry. Examine the areopaest and dactyl, which are trisyllabic feet, i.e., they are made of 3 syllables. E. The anapaestic meter. Below is scanned a passage in anapaestic trimeter. 1U/A/ I am monlarch $11 I survey. UUY/I am IC tilde I of the B tilde RDL ag G brute. You will notice above that the first foot of the second line is an iambus. Verses in the anapaestic meter often have iambic substitution. Now you do the following self-check exercise. Self-check exercise V. A. Greater than how fleet is the glance of the mind compared with the speed of its flight. The tempest itself lags behind, and the swift-winged arrows of light. The Assyrian came down like a wolf on the fold, and his cohorts were gleaming in purple and gold, and the sheen of their spears was like stars on the sea, when the blue wave rolls nightly on deep Galilee. Not a drum was heard, not a funeral note, as his corpse to the tamparts we hurried. Not a soldier discharged his farewell shot, or the grave where our hero we buried. For I am out of humanity's reach. I must finish my journey alone. A couple of lines are an anapaestic trimeter. However, the first foot is an iambic substitution. If, the decilic meter. It helps to recall a trochea, the converse of QN iambus, and the dactyl is the opposite of an anapaest. Below we scan a pasupendactylic dimeter. Grouch her not scornfully. Think of her mournfully. Gently and humanly. Not of the remains of her. Now is pure womanly. The passage above is in dactylic dimeter. The rhyme scheme is a BA. Now do the following exercise. Self-check exercise M. Scan the following, and then briefly comment on the scansion. A. One more unfortunate. Weary of breath. Rashly importunate. Gone to her death. Take her up tenderly. Lift her with care. fashioned so slenderly young and so fair. B. Merrily, merrily shall I live now under the blossom that hangs on the bough. Prelude to the study. Or Tilder dying for the study of poetry. Above you have learned to scan passages in the four dominant feet of English: E, the iambus, trochs, anapaest and dactyl. V, the amphibrachic meter. In a word such as eternal, you notice that the emphasis falls on the middle syllable. Eternal thus is in the amphibrachic foot. Let's scan a line in the amphibrachic meter. T. 4I010 / 0 hush th and l my baby old vi sire w s / night. You may have noticed that the last foot is an iambus. Self-check exercise vi. Scan the following passage, and then comment on your scansion. A. Most friendship is feigning, most friendship mere folly. Compare your scansion with the passage scanned for your under 2.9. Above you have an outline of the traditional English meters. These were established by the Renaissance theorists who tried to subject the vernacular English forms to the rules of classical prosody. Let us now turn to examine three other forms of meters. I. 2. 4. 2 strong stress meters. I. Antecedent to the syllable stress meters was the strong stress meter of Old and Middle English poetry. The strong stress meters for that reason are often called the native meters, and they are indigenous to the Germanic languages, such as German, English, Dutch, Swedish, etc. In strong stress verse there are a fixed number of stresses in each line. The unstressed syllables may, however, vary considerably. The use of strong stress meter can be seen in the Old English epic poem Beowulf, c. 1000, and in William Langland's vision poem, Piers Plowman. Below you have the opening four lines from the latter. F1/I. In the summer session I1 soft, was te son I1/'. I shop me into a shroud I1 a sheep as I were. /in bite of an kermite / unholy of lurkes. ID / when I would dean in this world / w dressed to hear. You would notice in the four lines above that each line divides into a medial pause, 11, or caesura. On both sides of the caesura there are two stressed syllables. The passage is also marked by alliteration. With the rise of French literature in England in the 12th and 13th centuries, rhyme replaced alliteration, and stanzaic forms replaced the four-stress line. However, the strong stress rhythm was too strong to be abandoned completely, and it can be felt in the love lyrics and popular ballads of the 14th and 15th centuries. If you star one Lord Randall, you will find a mixture of the iambus and the anapaest of the traditional prelude to the meter, along with the four stresses, divided equally on two sides of the caesura. Study. /T0WH and EIUBN I/Lord Randall, my SBN. I/CF and W year IUBN 11 my young man. 1 I hobbyN at the Crickенwood. /I mother, renack my bed soon. /D/6 for I am wearied YH din, /I and fain wad lie DWN. Today the strong stress survives in nursery rhymes and songs. /Jack and Jill 11 went up the hill. I / to fetch a pail / of water. / Jack fell down, and 11 broke his crown. / and Jill N came tumbling after. Above there is an alternation of 4 and 3 stresses in alternate lines. However, there is more regularity in most of the nursery rhymes. I/I1, 211 buckle my shoe. I/3, 4 knock at the door, /fight, SIIN pilk up sticks. I/7, 811 lay them straight. The middle of the 19th century saw the revival of interest in the strong stress meters due to the innovations of Walt Whitman, 1819-92, in America, and Gerard Manley Hopkins, 1844-89, in England. In the 20th century, a number of poets, including Ezra Pound, 1885-1972, T.S. Eliot, 1881,965, and W.H. Auden, 1907-73, revived the strong stress meter. Pound's Pison Cantos, 1948, and Eliot's Forked Ardits, 1943, testify to the energy of the strong stress meter. 2.4.3 Syllabic meters. In syllabic meters, stresses and pauses vary. The number of syllables in each line, however, remains fixed. poetry and romance lie tilde edges, languages that have grown out of Latin, the language of ancient Rome, subtle tilde as French, Italian and Spanish, is dominated by the syllabic meters. In English, however, to most ears, the syllabic count alone does not produce any rhythmic interest. 2.4.4 Quantitative meters. Quantity in the present context refers to the time we take to pronounce a syllable. It is a product of the duration for which we pronounce the vowel at the nucleus of the syllable. For instance, you can pronounce sweet rose in various ways, shortening and lengthening the vowel sound as you please. This variability, however, would hinder communication between the poet and you as the reader. Now if you compare Sanskrit, or Hindi for that matter, with English, you find that you cannot exercise your discretion in lengthening or shortening the vowel sound or the quantity of the syllable in the two Indian languages. They are predetermined by the linguistic system of Sanskrit and tilde indi. 01.enta tilde iers for flit. The quantitative meters dominated Greek and Latin poetry because they are highly zero-stiety of poetry inflected. To inflect a word is to change its form at the end according to its peculiar case, mood, tense, and number. For instance, we can say that child and boy inflect differently in the plural. The inflection promoted the construct ion of long, slopest lines because those languages supported the alternation of the long vowels in the roots, and the short ones in the inflections. English, which lost most of its inflections in the 15th century, Uhlel's German, is less hospitable to the quantitative meters. 2.5 Rhyme and rhythm in poetry. You know that verse is generally distinguished from prose as a more compressed and regularly rhythmic form of statement. One of the most important constituents of rhythm is meter, about which you know already. There are, however, other factors such as alliteration, the use of several nearby words, or stressed syllables begin wlth the same consonant, assonance, the repetition of the same, or similar vowel sounds usually in accented syllables, consonants, the repetition of a pattern of consonants wlth changes in the intervening vowels such as in linger, longer, yangzier, and onomatopoeia, which is direct verbal imitation of natural sounds, that also contribute to rhythm. Besides meter on the one hand and alliteration, assonance, consonants and onomatopoeia on the other, rhyme helps to create rhythm and define units of verse in subtle ways. Let's now examine rhymes, and what it does, after you've done a short exercise. Self-check exercise VIE1. Don't scan the following passages. However, identify the use of alliteration, assonance, or consonants in them, and then supply your comments in the space provided. Having done so, compare your answers with those supplied at the end of the unit. A. Ruin hath taught we thus to ruminate, the time will come, and take my love away. Shakespeare. Sonnet 64. B. 111 Pious times, ere priestcraft did begin. R. Before polygamy was made a sin. Dryden. Absalom and Achitophel. C. For shade to shade, will come to Drosier, and drown the wakeful anguish of the soul. Keats. Ode or Melancholy. D. Not the twilight of the gods, but a precise dawn, if sallow and grey bricks, ere the newsboys crying war. Louis McNeill tilde. 2.5.1 Rhyme and rhyme machines. Rhyme consists generally of identity of sounds at the end of lines of verse. Now let's read the following lines. Faith is not built on disquisitions vain, the things we must believe are few or plurs. John Dryden. Religio Lyci. Above vain and plain are rhyming words. You will notice that both are accented monosyllabic words. Such a rhyme is called masculine. When the accented syllable is followed by an unaccented syllable, as in pounding and pounding, the rhyme is called feminine. An example is given below. Then to come, in spite of sorrow, and at my window bid good morrow. You notice above that sun now and morrow are bisyllabic words and the accent falls on the first syllables. You will notice also that there is double rhyme above. In English, triple rhyme is used for comic or satiric purposes. A. Byron does in Don Juan. O. Ye lords of ladies intellectual, inform us truly, have they not henpecked you all? Above the last thee syllables that have been underlined rhyme. Sometimes syllables within the same line may rhyme, as in the east stanza of Broe tilde Ing's Confessions. Alas, we loved, sir used to meet, how sad and bad, and mad it was, but then how it was sweet. The word sad, Bad and mad in the passage above rhyme, though within the same line. This is an example of internal rhyme. When rhymes are only rhymes in appearance, and not in sound, as in the case of alone, and under remove and love we have I rhyme. Above, CVII1, you read a few lines from Wilfred Owen's Strange Meeting. The poem furnishes examples of a sonatilda's C. However, Owen called it pararhyme. Such rhymes are now used for special effects, but it was earlier understood as a signed prelude to the study. It seemed that out of battle IESCQED. Down some profound dull tunnel, long since scoot through granite's which titanic wars at point 1. Yet also there encumbered sleepers groaned. Wilfred Owen. Strange Meeting. A writer's tedier for the of pressing exigency or lack of skill. It was thus called OF Rulzint, or partial, sturdy OF poetry in Zierfechter Slargerlrins. You have read above that Old English, and Old Germanic heroic poetry as well as the lyrics in OE, were written in strong stress meter. With the ascendancy of the influence of French on English rhymes replaced alliteration, and stanzaic forms gave way to 4 stress lines of the so-called native or strong stress meters. However, blank verse is unrhymed verse, and until the advent of key verse it alone achieved wide popularity in English. Although used by the Earl of Surrey, in translating Virgil's Aeneid, blank verse was employed merely in drama. Milton's Paradise Lost, 1667, however, was one of the first epic poems in English low usage. In the 19th century Wordsworth's The Prelude, 18,681,869, Tennyson's Ill! Y per ls of the King, 1/833 right parenthesis and Browning's The Ring Azed the Book, 18,681,869, were written in blank verse. Sometimes stanzaic fonds do not exist in poetry in blank verse, as in the case of Milton's Lycidas, 1637, and Paradise Lost. This is true also of rhymed verse, as in Samuel Johnson's London, 1738, and The Vanity of Human Wishes, 1749. The texts are divided into units of sense, as in prose paragraphs and are thus called verse paragraph. The recurring feature of English poetry is, however, a stanza which consists of a fixed number of lines, and a well-defined rhyme scheme. However, it is not so in the case of Dryden's Alexander's Feast, which you will read in Block 5, which 11 has lines of varying lengths as well as number of lines. Similarly, Spenser's epithal Tildonrian is in the stanzaic form, but the stanzas are constituted of lines of varying lengths and rhymes. In this case, stanzaic form is reinforced by a refrain, i.e. a line repealed at the end of each stanza. The simplest form of a stanza is the couplet, that is 2 lines rhyming together. A single couplet in isolation is called a distich. When a couplet expresses a complete thought and ends in a terminal punctuation sign, we call it a closed couplet. You have already read about the heroic couplet. A traditional form of the couplet is the tetrameter, or 4-beat couplet. Milton's El Allegro and Marvels to his coy mistresses are admirable examples of great poetry in the octosyllabic couplet. A 3-rhymed pattern is called a triplet or tercet. Below is an example of it from 111 Dryden's poetry. Warmed with more particles of evenly flame, he winged his upward flight, and soared to fame. The rest remained below, a tribe without a name. 3 lines with 1 set of rhyming words can be found also in Tennyson's Ryle Eagle. This is, however, not very common in English, and is generally used to give variety to a poem in the rhyming couplet. However, the rhymes are so tilde-needy tilde-ness linked from verse to verse, and may run as ABA BC BC DC dead and so on. This form of triplet is called terza rima. It is borrowed from Italian, and was employed by Dante, 1265-1321, in his Divine Comedy. The finest example of it in English is Shelley's Ode to the West Wind, which, however, ends in a couplet. Quatrains are stanzas of 4 lines. Above you read about the ballad stanza in which tetrameter and trimeter lines alternate. A variety of rhyme schemes have been observed in quatrains. A B in which lines rhyme alternately, a BCB in which the 2nd and 4th lines only rhyme. I. Dryden, in Annus Mirabilis, and Gray, elegy written in a country churchyard, in prelude to the one the 18th century employed 5 stress iambic lines that rhyme alternately. In the study I 19th century Tennyson used tetrameter quatrains rhyming a B, B, a, in, and I. Memoriam and Fitzgerald used pentameter quatrains that rhyme a, B, in his translation of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. I. There are, however, stanzas of 5, 6, 7 and 8 lines which are too numerous to be differentiated. Earlier we will discuss some of the named varieties. A. Rhyme royal was used by Chaucer for the first time in English in Troilus and Cresseid, c. 1,385,188, and then by Shakespeare in The Rape of Lucrece, 1594. The rhyme scheme of a 7-line stanza in rhyme royal is a B, B, C, C. It looks as if a quatrain has been dovetailed onto 2 couplets. B. A tava rima was introduced in England by Wyatt in the 16th century. The premier example of this verse form is Byron's Don Juan. The rhyme scheme of the 8-line stanza is a B, C, C. You will notice that an extra rhyme has been introduced in the rhyme royal scheme. The single couplet at the end of the stanza gives a witty verbal snap to the foregoing section. C. The Spenserian stanza, like the preceding 2 stanza forms discussed above, has iambic pentameter lines. However, the last line is an Alexandrine. Edmund Spenser devised it for the Fairy Queen. In the 19th century Keats employed it brilliantly for Eve of St. Agnes and Shelley for Adonais. The 9 lines rhyme A, B, B, C, B, C, C. You notice that the B sound recurs 4 times and C 3. The pattern is intricate, and poems in this stanza form are slow-moving. D. The sonnet was originally a stanzaesque by the Sicilian school and court poets in the 13th century. FRPM there it went to Tuscany, where it reached its highest expression in the poetry of Petrarch, 1304-74. He wrote 314 sonnets idealizing his beloved Aura. In England it was Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey, 1517-47, D.N.D. Sir Thomas Wyatt, 1503-42, who experimented with the sonnet form, and gave it the structure that Shakespeare used and made famous. Since then the sonnet has proved to be one of the most versatile of the poetic forms. It was used in recent years by Tilda Ikram Setman in his novel The Golden Gate. Long poems composed of a series of sonnets are called sonnet sequence. Poets such as Edmund Spenser, Sir Philip Sidney, Michael I. Drayton, William Shakespeare, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, D.G. Rossetti, W.H. Auden, Conrad Aiken and Rainer Maria Rilke have grouped together sonnets dealing with a particular lady or situation. However, the degree in which they are autobiographical or tell a coherent story is a matter on which opinions diverge. The sonnet today is defined as a lyric of 14 lines in the iambic pentameter form. However, originally it was a stanza in the Italian. There have been sonnets in the hexameter, as for instance the first of Sidney's Asclepiads and Stella and Milton's On the New Forces of Conscience, which is in 20 lines. Most of the sonnets, however, fall into 2 or 3 categories: the Petrarchan, Shakespearean, and Spenserian. The Petrarchan sonnet is divided into 2 parts of 8 and 6 lines each, called the octave and the sestet. Originally the sonneteer set forth a problem in the octave, and resolved it in the sestet. However, Milton did not follow the convention, nor did he use it as a medium for the expression of his amorous inclinations as Petrarch had done before him. Wordsworth and Keats both wrote Petrarchan sonnets. A Petrarchan sonnet follows the rhyme scheme Abba Abba in the octave. In the sestet 2 or 3 rhymes may be employed, such as C D C C D C or D D. Arias and tires for D. The Shakespearean sonnet is usually divided into 3 quatrains, to be followed by strr out of poetry a rhyming couplet. The rhyme scheme of a Shakespearean sonnet is a Bab C D C D F of G G. A spur tilde Syrian sonnet is also divided into 3 quatrains and a rhyming couplet. However, there are fewer rhymes in the Spenserian sonnet than in the Shakespearean. The Faunner follows the following rhyme scheme: a Bab B C B C C D C D E. Above we have discussed rhymes and the various types of rhymely schemes employed by poets writing in English. Now let us examine the function of rhythm in poetry. 2.5.2 Rhythm. Rhythm is, to borrow Plato's words, an order of n tilde movement in time. We generally speak of rhythm in connection with poetry or music. However, you must have heard people talking of the rhythms of nature, or even biological rhythm. Perhaps periodic repetition of a certain pattern is the sine qua non of rhythm. All the arts, painting, sculpture, and architecture have their rhythm. Here, however, we will talk of rhythm in the context of poetry only. Above you studied about a variety of acoustic effects in poetry such as meter, rhyme, alliteration, onomatopoeia, etc. They contribute to the rhythm of a poem. Prosody, which takes into account the historical period to which a poem belongs, the poetic genre and the specificities of a poet's style, goes closer to the rhythmic aspect of a poem. For instance, quantity, or vowel length, is a rhythmic, but not a metrical feature of English poetry. This is because English does not impose any strict regularity in quantity as it does with respect to stress. For example, in Sweet Rose the vowel sounds can be lengthened or shortened at will. This cannot be done. I see many Indian 131 languages. However, the lengthening and shortening of the vowel sound does affect the rhythm of the poem. Similarly, the asterisk rise and fall in the H-tilde voice, especially in reading poetry, which is called cadence, is a rhythmic, not a metrical feature. Many other factors contribute to the rhythm of a piece of verse or prose. Grammatical features are some of these. Roynan Jacobson drew our attention to grammatical features in poetry. He compared the role of pure grammatical parallelism in poetry to geometrical features in painting. For the figurative arts, he wrote, geometrical principles represent a beautiful necessity, and went on to add, it is the same necessity that in language marks out the grammatical meanings. In his Yeats' Sorrow of Love through the Years, written along with Stephen Ruddy, they drew attention to Yeats' predilection for art that is not mere storytelling. They went on. According to Yeats, the arts have already become full of pattern and written tilde. Subject pictures no longer interest us. In this context he refers precisely to Degas, in Yeats' opinion an artist whose excessive and obstinate desire to picture life and life at its most vivid and vigorous had hand his work. See *I. Joel Thompson and Ruddy go further and point out, T11E poet's emphasis on pattern reminds one of Benjamin Lee or the penetrating linguist who realized that the patternment aspect of language always overrides and controls the lexation or name-giving aspect, and an inquiry into the role of pattern in Yeats' own poetry becomes particularly attractive, especially when one is confronted with his constant and careful modification of his own works. THC2 authors go on and draw attention to Yeats' epigraph to his Clicteti work Ear V:(RC, JIIC, Praise Wick 11 Re, plus. The Fiends that have it, I do wrong when Eves I remake a song, should LOW, what issue is it stale? It is N-tilde that I remake. In the course of his revisions, the patternings, Yeats claimed not just to be improving his poems lexationally but pattern-wise, rhythm-wise, which he equated with 11 remaking himself under the influence of some much more deep and subtle truth which we can apprehend, if at all only transiently. If we scan a couple of sonnets of Shakespeare and compare their rhythm, we can appreciate its role in a poet's style. Let's first scan two sonnets of Schultescare, sonnets 71 and 116. They are given below. Sonnet 7-1. Y/1/C//V/I/let me, not to the inner eye of T.T. Winans. Prelude to the study. 01 Yen show tilde Z4. Z. Die of poetry FT1I. D1/ Loves tilde T/TIRNELS fool / though *ug rosy * lips land cheeks. 19// but bears it out even to the edge of doom. Sonnet 116. You may have noticed above that in Sonnet 71 Shakespeare's theme is death, his own death, not death in the abstract, as in the case of Donne. Shakespeare is addressing his beloved, the Dark Lady, and asking her to forget all about him. The legacies of time are suffering and despair, and Shakespeare conveys his slow progress towards them with the help of the solemn regularity of the iambic pentameter. It is, however, gently disturbed as the narrative progresses. A caesura divides the third foot of the sixth line. There are parentheses in lines 9 and 10. In the last line of the third quatrain, Shakespeare asks his beloved to forget him, after having written the sonnet to perpetuate his minority, nay more, let her love decay along with the decay of the lover's body. The irony of this audacious request finds echo in the spondaic third foot of the 12th line. Shakespeare's resigned irony soon finds voice in the 13th line, where the Pyrrhic first foot is succeeded by a spondee in the next. Rhythm derives from the Greek rhythmzos, which in turn derives from rhyme, which means to flow. Rhythm is generally understood as an ordered alternation of contrasting elements. However, you noticed above that Shakespeare gave expression to his personal feelings in Sonnet 71 by wrenching the meter. Mutability, death and decay were a recurrent theme in the poetry of the Elizabethan age, and the crowned rhythm of iambic pentameter adequately expresses it. However, if Shakespeare had made periodicity of accent the sine qua lion of his rhythm, it would have been only at the cost of his expressive range. Unlike Sonnet 71, Sonnet 116 is, to use Gerard Manley Hobbiton's term, metrically 1. Counterpointed I. Trochaic reversal in the first foot is not unusual in an iambic pentameter line. However, Shakespeare makes use of a trochaic foot even in the second. In fact, the only iambic foot is the third foot, which is succeeded by a perexpandaic combination. The first line is enjambed, i.e., it runs over to the second line with its 3 iambic feet, and a caesura and a reversed fourth foot. The sudden violence of the poet's feeling is checked with the help of 2 pyrrhic feet alternating, with the iambic ones in the last line of the first quatrain. The iambic ground rhythm is fully established only in the second quatrain. The third quatrain, however, begins with a reversal and a spandaic substitution. In the last line of the quatrain, the rhetorical emphasis on the third foot is supported acoustically with the help of a spondee. These deviations help the poet in lifting the theme above mundane realities and communicating his meaning better. We had a glimpse of Shakespeare's manipulation of meter in 2 of his sonnets. Even with the help of just 2 samples, we can say that Shakespeare has a powerful ~L and distinctive style. The prosody of every poet of genius is unique, and his rhythm is perhaps the most personal of the expressive equipments. However, we cannot forget that a language has a metrical pattern peculiar to itself. There is also a historical determinant of the choice of meter. Complex factors contribute towards the determination of rhythm. Nature herself, said Aristotle, teaches the choice of the proper measure. However, it is the poet's task to hear her voice with sincerity and humility, if she is to discover her limself. Self-check exercise X. 1. Briefly distinguish between rhyme and rhythm. 2. What according to you is rhythm? Write in about 30 of your own words. 3. Do you think that rhythm can be an indicator of a poet's style? Give reasons for your answer. Does a poet's style tell us about the person that he is? Prelude to the study. Tiltation for TL_E study of poetry. 2.6 Analysis of a poem. In the foregoing sections you read about the various elements of poetry. A knowledge of some of the theoretical aspects of poetry would help you in reading poems. Below you will read an analysis of Keats on first looking into Chapman's I Imer. Did you scan the poem and write YO_R observations in SCGID? B. If you did not, you should now do so, in order to benefit following in section. Let's now analyze the poem. On first looking into Chapman's Homer. John Keats, 1795 to 1821, was the youngest of the Ron_and_C poets, i.e. was the So-11 manager of a livery stables in Moorfields. He died when Keats was 8. His mother remarried, but died of tuberculosis when he was 14. John, the eldest child, had 2 brothers, George and Tom, and a sister, Fanny. Keats was apprenticed to an apothecary surgeon at the age of 15. Before the apprenticeship he had resolved his early education at Clark's School in Enfield. One evening in October 1816 Keats read the works of Homer in the translation of the Elizabethan poet George Chapman. He did this in the company of Charles Cowden Clark, son of his former master and his lifelong friend. That Keats had a monumental experience is clear from on first looking into Chapman's Homer. Somewhat lilt true Petrarchan sonnet, this poem also clearly divides the treatment of the theme between the octave and the sestet. In the octave Keats sets the background, while the sestet describes the effect on him of his experience. In the first half of the octave Keats speaks of his wide study of Western literature, which he characterizes as realms of gold. Keats' metaphor gives us an insight into his attitude towards literature. The goodly states and kingdoms are the poet's territories they have marked out as their own in the infinite area of the English or Western languages. However, these territories are held by poets not insolently as kingdoms are held, but as a sign of their loyalty towards Apollo, the ancient classical god of poets. This is a sign of Keats' literary piety, for we know that it's like Shelley was not a Christian poet. The second half of the octave extends the metaphor of the diltdom of poetry to tell us that Keats had heard about Homer's epics, although he had never read them. Homer is traditionally recognized as the fur and epic poet of Europe, just like Varnilti and Vyasa were of India. They can be considered pure and original because they did not borrow their images via other poets. Homer knew and understood human nature dispassionately. His understanding was clear and unclouded by doubts, distractions and fears. Besides, Homer was the monarch of poets, deserved the exalted TLTLC of serene. It is at the end of the octave TH_T Keats tells us about the cause of H_S exalted. I.e. his reading, with Cherry's Coud and Clarld, of Homer and Chapman's prelude to the translation. The octave structurally is not divided from the sestet as it ends in a colon. Study. Having told us about the background of his poem in the octave, Keats tunes to communicate his enjoyment of ion_er to us in the sestet. This is done through two unforgettable images. The first of these is that of a professional astronomer into whose sight a new planet has moved in. The second is that of a discoverer such as Hernán Cortés WL_O conquered Mexico for Spain, and became the first Western adventurer to enter Mexico City. Historically, however, it was Vasco Núñez de Balboa who was the first European in 1513 to stand on the peak of Darien in Panama. It is significant that Keats does not mention any astronomer such as Galileo who had discovered new satellites of the planet Jupiter. It would be in keeping with Keats' piety to infer that in referring to some watcher of TLLC skies he is noting use of the primitive figure of speech of periphrasis. If the images help Keats in communicating his peculiar feeling or flavor of the sense, or meaning the rhythm of his verse, gives further density by suggesting the right tone and unfolding the intention while re-emphasizing his meaning or sense and feeling. As pointed out earlier, On First Looking is a Petrarchan sonnet that makes use of 4 rhymes in the following scheme. Abba Abba CD CD CD. Perhaps it would be apposite to point out that, because of such 11 few rhymes, i.e. 4, the intensity of feeling is communicated better than it could have been done with the help of a Shakespearean sonnet with its 7 rhymes, and relatively loose structure more suitable for a meditative and philosophical tone. Although European in appeal thematically, Keats' sonnet is typically English with its crowned rhythm of iambic pentameter. There are only 2 variations in the first quatrain. There is a Pyrrhic foot in the first, and another in the 4th line. The second quatrain begins with 11 a trochaic reversal, and it announces the turn in the subject matter. From literature in general, I see it narrows down to Handler in the second half of the octave. The sestet which describes Keats' state of exaltation conveys it at the acoustic level through variations from the blank verse crowned rhythm. Lines 10, 11, 12, and 13 will be Pyrrhic substitutions. I11 case we lighted the unstressed first foot to include the article A in the first foot of the 10th line. We called read it as an anapnesil foot. However, in that C the line would have only 4 feet, it would become brief and fast, suggesting the swimming of a planet into the range of vision. OLTL_E astronomer with asteroid umbilical speed. There is another anapos_C substitution 3 the 4th foot OFTHE 12th line. However, the line retains the 5 feet not with tilde standing the trisyllabic foot. The last 4 lines are given to the explorers in the New World, and the crescendo comes in the last line, which begins with a trochaic reversal. Importance of the theme for the poet is suggested by THC spandaic 2nd foot OL the 11th line, which begins the new con tilde parison. Keats has been called a poet of the senses. The abstract idea of the discovery of a new planet gives joy that is cerebral, but the sight of the seascape from the peak in Darien is more sensual and akin to Keats' character. The choice of Keats' imagery in this sonnet and not tildeing it to the appropriate rhythm clinches the success of the poem. On first lulsing into Chapman's Homer has, no wonder, becoming a felicitous record of one of Keats' unforgettable personal experiences of an encounter with THC, father of European poetry, that was Homer. Above we have tried to show how the various aspects of apocn_C_TIB knit to an account of your appreciation of it, especially with respect to his observations on rhythm. If you were in a class with your fiends we N_ILHN_E analyzed a few POC:_S and second how our responses varied. If possible, try it out from T_MC the time, at the study Sendler, or at a privately formed study group. Orientation for the study of poetry 2.7. Let's sum up. This unit brings the orientation for the study of MA English in general, and this course on British poetry in particular to an end. With the help of these 2 units we have tried to tell you how you can say something about a work of art in general and a poem in particular. We began the orientation by reacting basically to 2 portraits on the first and third covers of this course. This was because the visual art smells an immediate appeal. They are appreciated both individually and socially, communally and in small groups. A piece of literature, especially non-dramatic literature, has to be enjoyed privately. Hence we began the orientation by commenting on 2 box traits. Criticism has often been described as the soul's adventure among masterpieces, and this course, which for you is an adventure of critical appreciation, began with an appreciation of 2 portraits that also symbolically meant to tell you about this course. Besides, each block will have 1 or 2 copies of paintings that are meant to serve as frontispieces, and also visually tell you about the age. Just a few comments are offered on them in the introduction to the blocks. You may explore further on your own, because it has been recognized since time immemorial that proficiency in several arts is necessary for specialization in any one. Did you read the epigraph of this course? It can as well be a desideratum for you. In this unit we examined in the first place the thing called literature, especially poetry in somewhat abstract terms. In the second place we examined the prosodic aspect of poetry. Finally we showed how the various aspects can be put together in our critical appreciation of a poem. In the last major section we have done for poetry what in the previous unit we did FDR poets. We critically appreciated a poem. This is what we expect you to be able to do on this course. Critics say that the evolution of the rhythm of a language tells us about the cultural evolution of the people, their changing and evolving consciousness. If this is a tall claim, I leave you to decide for yourself. Hereafter the units will tell you either about an age or a poet, or about some poems. WE will expect you to be able to respond to all the 3: the man, the milieu and the momst that gave birth to the poem in your comments on passages set from poems prescribed for detailed study and printed in these blocks. This is a long unit. You must not have expected it to be longer. At the MA level, I did not consider it necessary to describe the genres such as lyric, epic, ode, etc., or figures of speech such as simile, metaphor, synecdoche, metonymy, etc. You should consult a dictionary of literature in order to discover the terms of art as and when you feel the need to do so. 2.8 A brief annotated bibliography. This unit does not tell you about literary terms, figures of speech, etc. However, as a student of literature you will be required to understand and use theme in various contexts including your essays and answers. Below are recommended a few *I dictionaries and encyclopedias for your use. The new edition of the Oxford Companion to English Literature, 1985, edited by Margaret Drabble, is intended to serve, as its predecessor Sir Paul Harvey's, 1932, as a useful companion to ordinary everyday readers of English literature. It gives brief notes on authors of books, leader-lie trends such as neoclassicism and romanticism, postmodernism is alas missing, figures of speech such as oxymoron and liddits, literary movements such as the Oxford, or pre-Raphaelite and aesthetic movements, and many other facts that a student of English literature would wish to know from time to time. It is possible that the new edition has not reached the shelves of the library you have access to. That should not disturb you. I found Sir Paul's work very delightful, and in the beginning Drabble's work with its shorter notes was a bit of a disappointment one to me. Besides the companion you may consult Dictionary of Literary Terms by Harry Shaw, published by McGraw-Hill Book Company, New Delhi, 1972, and the Concise Oxford Dictionary of Literary Terms by Chris Baldock, Delhi, 1990. The Oxford Companion to 20th Century Poetry, edited by Ian Hamilton, Delhi, 1994, has a much broader coverage on poetry in English. Literary criticism today inner than ever before has been under the influence of disciplines such as rhetoric and linguistics. You would find A.B. Sharma's The Growth and Evolution of Classical Rhetoric, Ahanta, New Delhi, 1991-92, at the Study and Regional Center. 6 is meant to introduce classical rhetoric to distant learners in India like Ichthild herself. For a quick reference to terms such as felicity conditions or lexi Runsell, A Dictionary of Stylistics by Katie Wales, published by Logman, London, 1989. Encyclopedia of Literature A's Criticism edited by Martin Coylett. Al. Routledge. London, 1990, has long articles written by experts on various aspects of literature, including an article on postmodernism by Robert B. Ray, pages 131-147. In case you wish to study some thought-provoking essays on poetry and its meaning, I should recommend just two. The first one is by Roynan Jacobson, called What is Poetry? Pages 368-378, in Language Aldia Turndler, edited by Christina Pomorska and Stephen Rudy, Harvard University Press. Cambridge, Ma, 1987, and the other one called The Third Meaning, pages 52 HR, by Roland Barthes and Zage, Mlsik. Text, Flamingo. London, 1982. We may allude to those essays a few times il th course. The character of critical appreciation of liters at *r. General and poetry in particular has changed radically over the last ple of decades, and its influence has been felt in the English departments in India as well. It would be a good idea to read Teenie Eagleton's literary theory with its chapters on reception theory, phenomenology, hermeneutics, psychoanalysis, dualism, semiotics, etc. It will also be a good general introduction for your MA English program. 2.9 Answers to Self-Check Exercises. Exercise I. 1. The reader adds to the meaning of a poetic text. The poem is of course the cause of the meaning. However, that is not the only cause. I1 has to be understood in terms of our background knowledge of the poem. However, we cannot understand it unless we do so in the light of our own experience of life. The reader recreates meaning. 2. A poem is made, or words, just as a portrait is made of colors, or a piece of music is an arrangement of sounds. There, however, the matter does not end. A real poem, as opposed to mere verse, embodies a poet's life's experience, an intense moment of revelation of life's truths, joys and sorrows. Just as a formula in any mathematics, or a sutra in Sanskrit grammar embodies more than meets the eye, a poem appears to reveal truths as we go on living. Prelude to the study. Note: the answers above are subjective, and your responses may not be in full agreement with mine. However, think over the matter. You should discuss your own answers, if you can, in your peer group. Orientation for Tire Exercise 11. Study of Poetry W/1. ~n wood /rk/gr. The two lines above are in iambic dimeter. However, they are zippermetrical, which means that an unaccented rhyming syllable is at the end of each line. The quatrain above is in regular iambic trimeter. Above there are two couplets in regular iambic tetrameter. 4. In the stanza above, lbic trin Edgar lines alternate with iambic tetrameter eix. We also notice that swell and fell rhyme, but the first and third lines don't. We thus get the impression that the stanza could also be written as iambic heptameter couplets. 4u//15. I put /my hat upon /my head. I. 414/ %DLKEDLINTO/ the strand, whose hat was in his hand. / THC poem above is iambic in rhythm alternating tetrameter and trimeter in verse. Self CHCCK Exercise 111. Now you may scan a couple of passages L'(R.0111 Shakespeare and Yeats, and write your comments on THCM and ER9F:(LCR), provided. UIDL/IDJ/HAP/PI/Pro/Logista/thuswell/INAC Prelude to the study. F'(U) J Q $1 Y hat 9 at GNMCE lest of Uxus I/$SGCDD D Jvi DCJ $L Suggy Ion. Shakespeare. Macbeth. If you read Shakespeare's Macbeth new ding drama, EC07, you must have recognized the words of the epigram ?RC, LU, 111 the play. Macbeth met the three with S on his way back from the battle. V41 had addressed him successively as Duke of Glarness, Thane of Cawdor and finally as King of Scotland. Impressed by his display of courage, Duncan has honored him by NG him the dukedom of Glamis and LQ1 Ainship of Cawdor. However, Macbeth, tilde Otiic King of Scotland Wickley he cannot be, unless, he thinks, he murders Duncan, his king and held comma dot colon factor. The idea of regicide and ingratitude has shaken him, and liad 1n colon ls awfully avtolk his functions being smothered in swise apostrophe. The given extract is the opener. P a T of TL tilde exclamation point I introspection, for us, and soliloquy for the audience in the theater. The ground rhythm of the extract is iambic pentameter. However, Li does not folio it slavishly. There are interesting variations. Psi are as below. The first line is iambic dimeter. The first foot is a spondee. There are at least 3 purses in a passage of 10 lines, i.e. in the 3rd, 6th, and 7th. 7th and 8th 11 lines are hypermetrical. There are 2 caesuras in the 3rd and 7th lines. The 3rd F tilde OT of the 6th, and the 4th foot of tilde E 7th line have gay 11 elision. With the help of these variations Shakespeare imparts colloquial case and tilde and brixil tilde tie to the soliloquy. We notice here, to use Coleridge's words, as we did not in the Caw of Sackville and Norton, meter being used as a pattern of CXL, dation, lid liln tilde CNT and surprise. As Macbeth makes H tilde S progesfium confusion to Clanley and TLLC cursed 01 the soliloquy we notice the gound rhythm becoming lore and mole dot E nat tilde ool. Acol D111 G Lou Harvey Gross, the function of prosody is to image life in a rich and CC greater than bless way. We notice here for ourselves, how prosody has succeeded in articulating the movement of the mind of Macbeth. B. On first looking into Chapman's Homer. Orientation for the study of poetry. For comments on prosodic features of this sonnet read section 2.6. Self-check exercise IV. /U/ dismal screams. IU/ shrieks of woe. /B/ sullen moans. Tilde OLLOWIUGR6ANS. A Pope. You could say that above there are 3 couplets in trochaic monometer. However, it would be more appropriate to call it a passage in trochaic dimeter with the 2nd foot being catalectic in each case. Perhaps the best idea would be to call it a passage in the amp, renacer foot. The passage can be scanned in any of the 3 ways. 0. RLHGES tilde E, CTHPS $E. J. Dryden. The 2 lines are in trochaic dimeter. C greater than it and T question mark by a query $U exclamation point XA. The dot stanza is in trochaic tetrameter. However, the last foot of every line is catalectic. We call a foot catalectic that has just an accented syllable. Longfellow. The stanza is in trochaic tetrameter. Hove. The last foot of the 2nd and 4th lines are catalectic. The rhyme scheme of the passage above is a B. The stanza is in trochaic pentameter. The couplet is in trochaic hexameter. Self-check exercise V. The ground rhythm of the passage above is anapestic trimeter. Ho of ik lil. Greater than T foot of each of the first 3 lines is an iambus. Iambic substitutions in lines III in apocestic meter is quite common. At LU/UI the tilde SS tilde D a tilde NC %EDD and dash plus J tilde W exclamation point LLF/and the fold. 3Y. Anapestic tetrameta without any variatio. KUIU not a drum was H6 art, not a F neural NT, UV// as H tilde S corpse GCRLMP, RTSXDHGMD, LU1 not a old ear discharged his pharynx less 4 odd. U/UY/U/J or the grave, where our hero we buried. PVUT, % study. Orientation for the study of poetry, if repetition of a pattern, is the sine qua non of rhythm, the passage is uniformly in tetrameter. However, out of 16 feet only 10 are in the anapaest. The remaining feet are in the iambic. /Ju1 IMU of humatized reach. The couple of lines are in anapestic trimeter. However, the first foot is an iambic substitution. Self-check exercise Vi. Scan the filioque, and then briefly comment on the scansion. /lub1g neither eth. A/J. The 2 stanzas above are in dactylic dimeter. They rhyme alternately, i.e. a B C D C D. The 2nd, 4th, 6th, and 8th lines are catalectic. The couplet /distich above is in dactylic trimeter. Self-check exercise Vi 4. Both the lines are in amphibrachic dimeter. Self-check exercise VE. A. There is alliteration and ruin, and ruminate on the one hand and taught, time and take on the other. B. J. Dryden by employing piouses, priesteroft and polygamy on the one prelude to the study. Hand and beckon, and before on the other, and his distich makes use of the figure of sound OF alliteration. C. The repetition of the sibilants, i.e. shade and soul on the one hand and drosily and drown on the other, create an equivalent effect that is daily experience. Tilde HBARTICULR type of effect is called alliteration. D. In the two lines the consonants in dawn and war are different. However, there is an identity of vowel sounds. This is an example of assonance. It seemed that out of battle I escaped. Down some profound dull BNEL, long since swooped through granites which titanic wars had groined. Yet also there encumbered sleepers groaned. Wilfred Owen. Strange meeting. In the passage above we have underlined 4 words. Escaped and swooped have an identity of consonants, while the vowels differ, just as in groan and crone also. These are 2 examples of consonants. Self-check exercise X. 1. Rhyme refers to the agreement in terminal sounds of 2 or more words, or lines in verse such as in which, increase and peace, descend and extend. Rhythm indicates measured flow of words, and phrases in prose or verse are movement suggested by the succession of strong or weak elements, or of different conditions in a given time span. 2. Rhythm is one of the factors of style. It indicates flow or progression in time. Certain units get repeated in rhythm. A foot in English poetry, when repeated, contributes to the rhythm of that poem. Poets often achieve effects not by regularity, but through breaks in the order, the established ground rhythm of the poem. 3. Every poet, for that matter any artist, has a distinctive style and his/her rhythm contributes towards it. We talk about Milton's grand style, and contrast it with the gentle art of Shakespeare. Milton writes about heaven, and God and Satan. Shakespeare about ordinary men and women involved in their common love and hate, ambition and defeat, pride, and earnesty such as we experience ourselves. Their choice of words, rhythm.of their language are thus poles apart just as are their themes. All these tell us something about the persons that Milton and Shakespeare must have been in their inner lives. Geoffrey Chaucer, 1340–1400.